The autumn leaves swirled through Willowbrook's main square like fragments of fire caught in the wind. Sarah Mitchell stood on the platform of the small-town train station, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her navy blue coat, trying to keep them from trembling. The morning air was crisp, biting at her cheeks, but that wasn't why she was shaking. David stood before her, his worn leather duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his eyes, those warm hazel eyes that had captured her heart 3 years ago at the county fair, glistening with unshed tears. The 8:47 to Seattle was pulling into the station, its brakes squealing like a wounded animal. "I wish you didn't have to go," Sarah whispered. David cupped her face in his hands. "I know, baby, but Tech Vision is the fastest-growing startup in the Pacific Northwest. If I can prove myself, we'll have everything we've ever dreamed of. A real house, security, a future." 2 years, David continued, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "That's all I'm asking for, maybe 3 at most. I'll work hard, save every penny, and then I'll come back. We'll get married right here in Willowbrook, just like we planned. We'll buy the old Victorian on Elm Street, the one you've always loved. We'll fill it with kids and laughter." The conductor's voice boomed across the platform. "All aboard for Seattle. Final boarding call." David pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She buried her face in his chest, inhaling his scent, coffee and cedar and something uniquely David. "I promise you, Sarah," he whispered into her hair. "I promise I'll come back. This isn't goodbye forever, it's just see you later." She pulled back to look at him one last time. "You promise?" "I promise." He kissed her then, long and deep. "I'll write you every day, I'll call every night, and before you know it, I'll be walking back through this station." "I'll be waiting," Sarah said. "Right here, I'll be waiting." David grabbed his bag and ran for the train. He jumped on just as it began to move, turning back to wave at her. Sarah waved back, her vision blurred with tears. "I love you," David shouted over the noise of the train. "I love you too," she called back, but she didn't know if he heard her. She stood on that platform long after the train had disappeared from view. The station master, kindly old Mr. Peterson, gently touched her shoulder. "He'll be back, Sarah," Mr. Peterson said softly. "Young love like yours doesn't just disappear." But as she walked home through the leaf-strewn streets of Willowbrook, she felt the first stirrings of doubt. The world was big, and Seattle was far away, and promises were sometimes easier to make than to keep. Part 2. The Fatting Connection. The first letter arrived 3 days after David left. Sarah had been checking the mailbox obsessively, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. "My dearest Sarah, Seattle is insane. The city never stops moving. My apartment is tiny, but it's in Capitol Hill. Tech Vision is everything I hoped for. The work is incredible. We're building something that could change how people interact with technology. But none of it means anything without you. I went to this amazing ramen place last night, and all I could think about was how much better it would be if you were sitting across from me. I miss you so much it physically hurts, but we're doing this for us, remember? 2 years and then I'm coming home. Count on it. All my love, David." And there were many others. David wrote constantly in those first months. They talked on the phone every night, conversations stretching for hours. David would call right after work, and they'd talk until one of them fell asleep. "Tell me about your day," became their ritual opening. Sarah would tell him about her work at the Willowbrook Public Library, about the book club meetings, about the small-town life he'd left behind. David would tell her about meetings and code and venture capitalists. His world sounded exciting and foreign, so different from the quiet rhythms of Willowbrook. For those first few months, Sarah believed him completely. The cracks began to show around month 6. The letters became less frequent. Once a day became every other day, then weekly. The phone calls grew shorter. David was busy, he explained. They were launching a new product. He was working 16-hour days. "I'm sorry, baby," he'd say, his voice heavy with fatigue. "This is just temporary. Once we get through this launch, things will calm down." But things didn't calm down. In David's world, there was always another launch, another deadline, another crisis. Sarah tried to be understanding, but lying alone in bed at night, staring at her phone and waiting for calls that came later and later, she couldn't help but feel the distance between them growing. Her roommate Jennifer noticed. "You okay?" she asked one evening, finding Sarah staring at her phone at 2 a.m. "Fine, just waiting for David to call." "Sarah, it's 2 in the morning there. This has been happening a lot lately. Are you sure everything's okay?" Sarah's phone buzzed. "Just a text, so sorry. Meeting ran late. Can we talk this weekend? Miss you, love you." "He's building a future for us," Sarah told Jennifer, though she wasn't sure anymore who she was trying to convince. The first-year anniversary of his departure arrived. Sarah went to the train station and sat on the bench where they'd said goodbye. David had promised to call that morning. She waited. 8 o'clock came and went. 9, 10. At 10:47, her phone finally rang. "Sarah, God, I'm so sorry. We had an emergency board meeting." "It's okay, I understand. 1 year down, 1 to go, right? We're doing really well here. There's talk of a major acquisition. That means more money, which means I can come home sooner." "That's great, I'm proud of you." They talked for 20 minutes before David had to run to another meeting. After he hung up, Sarah sat on that bench for another hour, wondering if David was becoming a stranger. If the man she'd said goodbye to 1 year ago was slowly transforming into someone she wouldn't recognize. Part 3, The Stranger. The second year was harder. David's calls became increasingly sporadic. Sometimes a week would pass without contact. The letters had stopped entirely. When they did talk, the conversations felt stilted, forced. Sarah's life in Willowbrook continued its predictable patterns. David's life had become so complex that Sarah struggled to follow. He spoke about people she'd never met, using inside jokes she didn't understand. "You'd have to be here to really get it," became his frequent refrain. But Sarah wasn't there. She was in Willowbrook waiting. Jennifer had started dating Marcus, a teacher from the next town over. Sarah watched them together and felt envious of the simplicity of their relationship. They could see each other whenever they wanted. They could have spontaneous dates and all the small, ordinary moments that she and David had been denied. Her mother started making pointed comments about other eligible men in town. "I'm not interested," Sarah would say firmly. "I'm with David." "Are you, though?" her mother asked gently. "When was the last time you actually saw him? When was the last time he came to visit?" David hadn't visited, Not once in nearly 2 years. There had been plans, but something always came up. Then came the Facebook photos. One sleepless night, Sarah looked at David's social media. His page was full of photos from company parties, fancy restaurants, hiking trips with people whose names appeared repeatedly. And then she saw her, Rebecca Martinez. She appeared in photo after photo, always somewhere in David's vicinity. She was beautiful, dark hair, bright smile, stylish clothes. When David called a few days later, Sarah tried to keep her voice casual. "I saw some of your Facebook photos. Who's Rebecca?" There was a pause. "Rebecca, she's our VP of product, really talented. Why?" "She's in a lot of your photos." Another pause. "We work together pretty closely, but Sarah, are you jealous?" "Should I be?" "Of course not. Rebecca's just a colleague. You're the one I love." "When?" The question came out sharper than intended. "When are you coming home, David? It's been almost 2 years." "I know. Listen, we're in sensitive negotiations right now. Once that goes through, I'll be able to visit. I promise." Promises. They'd been living on promises for 2 years. Part 4. The breaking point. Year 3 began with resignation. Sarah had stopped checking the mailbox obsessively. She'd stopped planning her evenings around potential phone calls. She'd stopped looking at plane tickets to Seattle. David's mother called her in late October. "Sarah, dear, I wanted to check in. David mentioned you two haven't been talking much." "We're both busy, Mrs. Anderson." "Have you thought about visiting him? I went to Seattle last month, and his life there is so different, so fast-paced." "How did he seem?" Mrs. Anderson hesitated. "Happy, successful, but also distant. And Sarah, there was a young woman who joined us for dinner. Rebecca. She and David seemed close, very familiar." Sarah's heart sank. She'd known, hadn't she? On some level, she'd known for months. She called David. On the 4th try, he picked up. "Sarah, is everything okay? I'm at work." "We need to talk, now." "I'm at work. Can this wait?" "No, your mother called me. She told me about Rebecca." Silence. Not comfortable silence, but the loaded quiet of secrets held. "There's nothing going on with Rebecca," David finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Who is she to you, really?" "She's my colleague, my friend." "Do you talk to her more than you talk to me?" "That's not fair. I work with her." "David, I need you to be honest. Are we still in a relationship, or am I just someone you used to love who you're too guilty to let go of?" "I love you. I've always loved you." "But are you in love with me?" She heard him breathing, heard the background noise of his office. "I don't know what you want me to say," David finally admitted. And there it was. Not a denial, not a reassurance, just exhaustion. "I want you to say you're coming home," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I want you to say you still want the life we planned, but you can't say that, can you?" "My life is here now. My career, my future. I can't just walk away." "But you can abandon me." "That's not what I'm doing." "Then what are you doing? When was the last time I was your priority?" Silence. "I'm sorry," David said. "I'm sorry I've let you down." "I can't do this anymore, David. I can't keep waiting for you to figure out what you want. I deserve more than that." "Sarah, please, can we just take some time to think?" "We've had 3 years. How much more time do you need? Let me come visit. Let's talk face to face. A flicker of hope. When? Soon, I promise. Another promise. Sarah was exhausted from holding on so tightly. Okay, but David, I can't wait forever. Part 5. The Truth. Months passed. David didn't visit. He didn't even set a date. The promises dissolved like sugar in water, sweet for a moment, then gone. Their communication dwindled to almost nothing. A text every few weeks, a brief call on birthdays. They'd become strangers connected only by history and guilt. Sarah started therapy. Her counselor, Dr. Chen, helped her understand that she was grieving, not just the relationship, but the person David had been. You can grieve people who are still alive, Dr. Chen explained. You can mourn the loss of who they used to be. In January, Sarah decided to go to Seattle, not to salvage their relationship, but to get closure. She bought a plane ticket, booked a hotel. But before she could tell David, she got a phone call from his college roommate, Jake. Sarah, I need to tell you something. David's engaged. To Rebecca. He proposed last month. They're planning a spring wedding. The world tilted. Sarah sat down heavily, unable to breathe. I thought you should know before you saw it on social media, Jake said gently. What he's done to you, it's not okay. After Jake hung up, Sarah felt oddly numb. Engaged. David was engaged to Rebecca. The colleague he'd sworn was just a friend. She looked at David's social media. There it was, a photo of David and Rebecca, her hand displaying a diamond ring. The caption, she said yes, excited to start this new chapter with my best friend and the love of my life. The love of his life, not Sarah, Rebecca. The numbness gave way to anger. For 3 years, Sarah had been loyal. She'd turned down dates, organized her life around the idea that David would come back. And while she'd been waiting, he'd been falling in love with someone else. She typed a message, I know about Rebecca. I know you're engaged. You're a coward, David. Not for falling in love with someone else, but for not telling me. I've spent 3 years waiting for a man who doesn't exist anymore. Congratulations on your engagement. Don't contact me again. She hit send. Then she deleted his number, unfriended him on social media, took down their photos, packed up his letters. Jennifer found her stuffing everything into a box. What happened? He's engaged, Sarah said flatly. David's engaged to Rebecca, didn't bother telling me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Don't be, I'm done being sorry, I'm done waiting. Sarah drove to the town dump and threw the box away. As it landed, she felt something break loose inside her. The grief was still there, but beneath it was relief. For 3 years, she'd been in limbo. Now those chains were broken. Part 6, Healing. The following weeks were hard. Despite everything, Sarah still loved the memory of who David had been. But she threw herself into work, started a book club, went back to school for her master's degree. She rekindled friendships. She said yes to invitations. She remembered how to have fun, how to be present in her own life. In March, she went on her first date. His name was Peter, a teacher at Willowbrook Elementary. It was awkward, but Peter was kind. He showed up when he said he would. They went on a second date, then a third. In April, David's mother called. Sarah, I want you to know I'm furious with him. What he did was inexcusable. You were always the one I hoped he'd end up with. You made him better. Sarah cried after they hung up, not for David, but for the life she'd imagined. But as she cried, she also felt grateful that she'd learned the truth before wasting more years. In May, she got promoted to head librarian. She celebrated with friends, with her mother, with Peter who brought her flowers. That night, looking in the mirror, Sarah barely recognized herself. She looked older but also stronger, more solid, more herself. Part 7, Closure. October arrived again. 4 years since David left. Sarah almost let the day pass, but decided to honor the ritual one final time. She went to the cafe on Maple Street, sat at their old table, ordered coffee. But this time she brought a book, her laptop, reminders that her life had moved beyond waiting. The bell above the door chimed. She glanced up and froze. David stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, looking older and tired. Their eyes met. Sarah felt her heart spike, but beneath the emotions was something new, indifference. The desperate need to be with him was gone. "Sarah, I didn't know you'd be here." "What are you doing in Willowbrook, David?" "I came to see my parents, and I was hopping to run into you." "Why?" "Can I sit?" Sarah considered saying no, but she was curious. "Fine, but I have somewhere to be in 30 minutes. David sat down. He looked successful but haunted. "You look good." "Thanks, you look tired." "I am. Sarah, I owe you an apology. What I did, keeping you hanging on, lying about Rebecca, it was cowardly and cruel." "Why are you really here?" "The wedding's off. Rebecca and I broke up." Sarah felt surprised. "I'm sorry to hear that." "I realized I was making the same mistake twice, choosing a life over a person. Sarah, these past months have made me realize what I threw away. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." Sarah set down her coffee. "Are you here because you think we can get back together?" "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but—" "No," she said simply. David looked stunned. "Sarah, please, I know I hurt you, but I'm different now." "No, David. You don't get to show up after 4 years, after breaking every promise, after getting engaged to someone else, and expect me to take you back because your new relationship didn't work out. I'm here because I finally understand what I lost. You lost it 4 years ago when you got on that train. You lost it every time you chose a meeting over a phone call with me. You lost it when you fell in love with Rebecca but couldn't tell me. And you know what? That's okay. People change. What's not okay is coming back now trying to make yourself feel better." "I'm trying to make things right." "Some things can't be made right, David. Some damage is permanent. 4 years together means nothing." "It's not gone," Sarah said gently. "It's just over, and it's been over for a long time. I still love you." "Maybe you do, but love isn't enough. You also needed to choose me, to prioritize me, to keep your promises. You didn't do any of those things." "I can now. I left Tech Vision. I'm moving back to the area. I can be the person you needed me to be." Sarah shook her head. "But I don't need you anymore. I needed you 4 years ago. I needed you 3 years ago when I was waiting for your calls. I needed you 2 years ago when I was defending you to everyone. I needed you a year ago when you were proposing to someone else. But now, I've learned how to not need you, and that's actually a good thing." "Sarah, I've moved on. I've built a life I'm proud of. I've learned how to be happy on my own. And I've started seeing someone who shows up when he says he will, who makes me feel valued every day. So even if I wanted to give you another chance, which I don't, it wouldn't be fair to him. They sat in silence. The cafe bustled around them. I'm sorry, David said. For all of it, you deserved better. I did, but I've forgiven you, David. I don't carry anger anymore. I'm just sad for what we could have been if you'd made different choices. Sarah stood up, gathering her things. I hope you find peace with your choices and build a life that makes you happy. But that life can't include me. Not anymore. Goodbye, David, she said softly. Goodbye, Sarah. She walked out into the rain, feeling lighter than she had in years. She walked home, letting the rain wash over her face, mixing with tears of release. When she got home, Peter had left a message, just checking in, asking about her day. Simple things, ordinary things, but things that mattered. That night, Sarah wrote in her journal about seeing David, about closing that chapter. She wrote about the girl she'd been 4 years ago and the woman she'd become. And she wrote about promises, how the most important promises weren't the ones other people made to us, but the ones we made to ourselves. Epilogue. Sarah married Peter on a warm June afternoon in Willowbrook. It was small and simple, and exactly what she wanted. Mrs. Anderson came to the wedding. David had eventually married someone else. According to his mother, he seemed content. He'd sent his congratulations through his mother. As Sarah danced with Peter at their reception, she looked around at the life she'd built. Jennifer was there with Marcus and their twins, her library co-workers, her book club friends, her mother beaming with pride. And she thought about David, briefly, kindly, without pain. She hoped he was happy. But mostly, she didn't think about him at all. Because she'd learned something important. The best love stories aren't the ones where someone comes back. They're the ones where you find your way forward, with or without them. David had promised to come back, and he never did. But in the end, that had been exactly what Sarah needed. His broken promise had freed her to build something better, something real. As Peter spun her around the dance floor, Sarah laughed, genuinely, freely. This was her life now, not the one she'd planned, but maybe a better one. A life built on presence, not promises, on action, not words, on people who showed up. The past was behind her, and she was finally, completely, beautifully free.